We'll move next to the Public Safety Finance Bill, House File 2432, and we'll wait for Chairs Novotny and Moeller to make their way to the table. But actually, as they're doing that, maybe I'll turn to Ms. Adrians and ask that she tell the committee what the target was for this committee and if they've met the target.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the Public Safety Finance Committee, the target they received was an additional $50 million over the February forecast base for fiscal years 26 and 27. And then in the tails, the target was also an additional $50 million over the base that was established in the February forecast. And they did meet those numbers.
Wonderful. So with that, Chair Novotny moves House File 2432 be recommended for placement on the General Register. Chair Novotny, if you want to describe your bill.
Thank you, Chair. As they described, we did have a target of $50 million, but keep in mind that that was against a agency request that are now over $120 million. Most of those are fixed cost that are caused by union negotiated contracts. We did have prioritizing of peace officer training and recruitment with $5.5 million each year to the Philando Castile Training Fund, $500,000 for the first year to the Duty to Intercede training, and $2 million to the Intensive Police Officer Training Program. I see POET that has been instrumental in fast-tracking many people into the law enforcement career where we are desperately in need of new officers to come into the program. In addition to that, we put $1 million each year to fund local public safety radio equipment called Armor. That's not going to do any of the upgrades that we're going to need desperately, but it will be a Band-Aid in hope of getting us to the next step when that can be fixed. We also included penalty increases that will protect our most vulnerable and those who protect us, mandatory minimum sentence for first-degree criminal sexual trafficking, adding fentanyl to allowing a child or a vulnerable adult to have contact with that to make it same as contact with methamphetamine, consecutive sentences for assaulting a local jailer, that matches what we have for the state correctional officers, increasing the statute of limitation to 10 years for a first-degree arson, and a DOC required to maintain Narcan in the prisons. That was $18 million over the above, keeping in mind that 5.5 of that a year was the Philando Castile Fund. Most of those funds have been ongoing for the past 4 years, but never put in the base. So we're not really spending anything that wasn't part of the base before. And then we have $16 million for crime victim funds, $1.4 million for the BCA fraud unit. It's important to note that there were guardrails that were put into that that protected the mission and purpose of those investigators to honor the funding that comes from the commerce when those investigators were moved to the BCA. We did have a $3.5 million reduction from the governor's budget for Sentence to Serve program that was cut, and the remaining $18 million was put back to agency increases. With that, I turn it over to Chair Moeller.
Chair Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Novotny. Just a couple things that I'll emphasize that you mentioned already too. As you said, the operating adjustment, while we're certainly thankful for the target we received, and on paper it looks great compared to some of the other committees, the operating adjustment is still very much a big concern for our committee. It was $116 million in 26-27 and $141 in 28 and 29. Again, we got 50-50, $50 million in each biennium. And as the Department of Public Safety said, it's really going to impact their service levels, things like processing evidence in a timely fashion. And the DOC is the one that takes the biggest hit here. It's meeting their contract obligations for corrections officers. It's really going to reverse the progress they've come to about full capacity now with COs being hired, which is great. They were really having trouble retaining and recruiting. And this is really going to put a dent in those efforts, which is important not only to the corrections officers, but to the safety of the people who are incarcerated and their ability to get the programming that they need for rehabilitation. So just want to emphasize that. Yet in spite of that, I think we did a really nice job kind of balancing what the needs were that came to our committee, and do want to highlight victim services being a priority for both of our caucuses. Really appreciate the work with Chair Rarick on the victim services piece, and actually you'll see in this bill we've created a special revenue account to try to get some additional funding in. A lot of the victim services funding in the state, these are things like domestic violence shelters, sexual assault advocates, child abuse centers, and general crime advocates, comes from federal dollars. It's been a very unstable source for years. It comes from white collar crime fines, and that's not a consistent source, and it's been decreasing rather rapidly in recent years. And we have tried in the past biennium to kind of fill those gaps, thinking it would replenish again, and it just doesn't look like that's possible. So we're trying to think creatively and creating this special revenue account to help alleviate some of the needs there. Thank you.
All right. We'll move, there were no amendments, so we'll move to discussion to the bill. Members, questions and discussion to the bill. Chair Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, co-chairs, for your good work on this bill. I do have a question. I believe in the last biennium, there was money added to the budget, to the base budget for prisoners' phone calls, and I'm wondering how much that was, and if that wouldn't, if that were not funded at the full amount, if that would help with the shortfall at the Department of Corrections.
Representative Novotny or
I
Moeller.
believe we fund $3 million a year for that. And I just received a letter from the commissioner last night. I believe about 2.2 of that is going to the actual cost of the calls. And some of the money that was collected in those phone calls would go to offset other costs, cable TV, recreational equipment, things like that. And those are all now being absorbed as a cost from the DOC.
Representative Moeller, if you wanted to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just say that that was a priority for us to fund those costs. We heard in the interim, we had a hearing in December to talk about sort of long-term strategies when it comes to Department of Corrections. And we actually heard from Oklahoma, their Secretary of Public Safety, I think, that this isn't just sort of a thing that the progressives do or Democrats do, that making sure people have those family connections really helps with rehabilitation and also helps children be able to maintain contact with their family members who might be incarcerated. So, you know, we did have this discussion in committee and had some differing opinions about what we could do with that money, but I think it's really important for rehabilitation of folks to maintain that ability to have those connections with their loved ones.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, and I know it's a larger discussion to see if that is indeed effective, but Chair Novotny, did you say there was another sum of money that was spent on cable television? How much was that?
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair. About $1 million a year.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So $1 million a year, I think would have, you know, everything counts, and I mean to put something like that towards these correction officers to try to help keep them whole, I think would have been a good move. But it's overall, I'll support the bill, but that's a concern for me. Thank you.
Representative Yuki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you. I know you guys didn't have a huge target, and it barely covers operating costs, and I am too concerned about the Department of Corrections not having enough money to do some of those things that they need to do to make sure the folks that do come out of our system don't recidivate. And that is the big part of the programs that are in our prison systems. It's been a while since I was a CA in Senate, in the other body, judiciary. But if I can remember right, about 85% of the folks that are incarcerated end up coming back into our communities. We want to make sure that they're going to be successful, so we don't have to pay for their incarceration again. So thank you for maintaining the funding for the phone calls and some of the other things that actually keeping folks educated and busy in our prisons also keeps our guards safe. So just want to thank you for the work that you do.
Any further discussion? Representative Ekbaje.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, both chairs, Moeller and Novotny. It's good to see a compromise bill come together. I will just add, again, my thoughts. I think, anything that we can do to help rehabilitate people and make sure that they're successful, I think the phone calls go a long way to that. To the point about cost savings, my understanding is that the FEC has also capped costs for phone calls. So that way, I think not only the state of Minnesota, but other states that also are doing this program should see future cost savings as the years go by, which can be used, I think, for a variety of things to support our Department of Corrections. So thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no further discussion, we'll go to closing comments from our two co-chairs. Chair Novotny, do you want to go first, or Chair Moeller?
Sure, I'll go first. This is the first step. I am aware that the DOC is looking on ways that they're going to have to cost cut. This is a way that we're going to take that first step in preparations. Hopefully, it won't be as bad as forecast 2 years from now, but there will be cost cutting, and both sides of the aisle, I feel, want to make sure that the people coming out of prisons that we both acknowledge will be coming out are in a position that they can become productive members of society. And I hope that we continue to work to preserve that.
Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank Co-Chair Novotny again for working together on this. All our staff, too, on both sides of the aisle, our nonpartisan staff did a really great job. And it's a good bill, and I hope you all can support it. Thank you.
All right, with no further discussion on House File 2432, we're now going to have a series of motions to merge the two bills before voting on the Public Safety and Judiciary Bill as a combined entity. So first, Chair Scott, would you move that the language from House File 2300 as amended be incorporated into the Public Safety and Judiciary Omnibus as separate articles?
That's my motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, any discussion to the Scott motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. And Chair Moeller, would you move that the language from House File 2432 be incorporated into the Public Safety and Judiciary Omnibus as separate articles?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
All right, any discussion to the Moeller motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. And with that, Chair Novotny renews his motion that House File 2432, as amended, be recommended to be placed on the general register, and that nonpartisan staff be directed to make any technical corrections to amend the title. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. And House File 2432, as amended, is recommended to be placed on the general register. Thank you to the co-chairs.